Brazil, the rise of South America's giant. In the early hours of a humid morning in the vast Amazon rainforest, the sun slowly pushed its way through layers of mist rising from the jungle floor. Birds screamed through the canopy, insects buzzed like distant machinery, and the largest rainforest on Earth awoke for another day. For centuries, this forest had watched the rise and fall of civilizations, the arrival of explorers, and the birth of a nation that would eventually become the giant of South America, Brazil. But the story of Brazil did not begin with skyscrapers in São Paulo or the roaring crowds inside Maracanã Stadium. It began long before maps had even named the continent. The first peoples, many thousands of years before Europeans ever reached South America, the land that would become Brazil was already alive with diverse cultures. Hundreds of indigenous communities lived across the territory from the dense Amazon basin to the Atlantic coastline. They hunted, farmed cassava, navigated rivers using wooden canoes, and built societies closely connected to nature. For these communities, the forest was not simply a resource, it was a living spirit. Their knowledge of plants, animals, and rivers would later amaze scientists and explorers. Everything began to change in the year 1500. The arrival, on April 22nd in the year 1500, Portuguese navigator Pedro Álvares Cabral spotted land after weeks of sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. His fleet had been traveling toward India but drifted westward, discovering a coastline covered with thick forests and inhabited by people unlike any Europeans had seen before. Cabral claimed the land for Portugal, unknowingly opening a new chapter in global history. The Portuguese named the territory after a valuable tree found along the coast, pau-brasil. The tree produced a deep red dye that became extremely valuable in Europe. Soon, ships crossed the ocean carrying large amounts of Brazil wood, and the colony began to expand. But natural resources were only the beginning. The Sugar Empire. During the 16th and 17th centuries, Brazil became the leading producer of sugar in the world. Vast plantations spread along the northeastern coast. Sugar was so valuable in Europe that it was often called white gold. To produce it, plantation owners relied heavily on enslaved labor. Millions of Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic Ocean to work in the plantations and mills of Brazil. More enslaved Africans arrived in Brazil than in any other country in the Americas. This brutal system created enormous wealth but also shaped Brazilian culture in powerful ways. African traditions blended with Portuguese and indigenous influences, creating unique music, religion, cuisine, and language. Capoeira, an art form combining dance and martial arts, and the rhythmic sounds of samba would later become symbols of Brazilian culture around the world. While the Sugar Empire flourished, another discovery was about to change the colony forever: gold fever. Near the end of the 17th century, explorers searching the interior of Brazil discovered massive deposits of gold in a mountainous region now known as Minas Gerais. The news spread rapidly. Thousands of settlers rushed inland in one of the largest gold rushes in history. Entire towns appeared almost overnight. One of the most famous was Ouro Preto, a mountain town that soon glittered with wealth. Brazil suddenly became the economic center of the Portuguese Empire. Large quantities of gold crossed the Atlantic to Lisbon, funding palaces, churches, and military campaigns in Europe. However, this wealth also brought corruption, exploitation, and growing inequality. Heavy taxes imposed by Portugal angered many settlers, and the first whispers of rebellion began to appear. The path to independence. At the beginning of the 19th century, Europe entered a period of chaos. The armies of Napoleon Bonaparte were expanding across the continent. In the year 1807, as French forces threatened Portugal, the Portuguese royal family made a dramatic decision. They fled across the Atlantic. Escorted by the British Navy, the entire royal court relocated to Rio de Janeiro. For the first time in history, A European monarchy ruled its empire from a colony. Rio changed rapidly. Libraries, universities, banks, and cultural institutions were created. Brazil was no longer simply a colony. It had become the political center of the Portuguese world. When the king returned to Portugal in the year 1821, tensions quickly grew. His son, Prince Pedro, remained in Brazil as regent. Leaders in Portugal demanded that he return to Europe and restore Brazil to full colonial control. Pedro refused. On September 7th in the year 1822, near the Ipiranga River, he declared the independence of Brazil with the famous cry that Brazil would be free. Brazil became an empire, and Pedro became its first emperor. The empire years. Unlike many other countries in Latin America, Brazil remained relatively stable for many decades after independence. Under Emperor Pedro II, who ruled for nearly half a century, Brazil experienced significant modernization. Railways were constructed, telegraph lines connected cities, and large numbers of immigrants from Europe arrived. Coffee replaced sugar as the country's economic engine. Vast plantations spread across regions of São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, turning Brazil into the largest coffee producer on earth. Yet one dark institution still remained: slavery. Brazil became the final nation in the Western Hemisphere to abolish it. In the year 1888, Princess Isabel signed the Golden Law, officially ending slavery. Only 1 year later, the monarchy itself collapsed. The birth of the Republic. In the year 1889, a military coup removed the empire and declared Brazil a republic. However, democracy did not arrive easily. Political power remained concentrated among wealthy landowners and regional elites. Economic challenges, political instability, and social inequality continued to shape the young nation. During the 20th century, a powerful leader would rise and reshape Brazil's political landscape: the era of Getúlio Vargas. In the year 1930, Getúlio Vargas came to power following a political revolution. Vargas ruled Brazil for many years, sometimes as a reformer and at other times as an authoritarian leader. He introduced labor laws, industrial programs, and social reforms that helped modernize the Brazilian economy. Factories multiplied, cities expanded, and Brazil gradually shifted from an agricultural society toward an industrial one. Although his government strengthened the economy, it also limited political opposition and centralized authority. Still, the foundations of modern Brazil were taking shape. The military years. Another major shift occurred in the year 1964. The Brazilian military seized control of the government during a coup supported by groups fearful of communist influence during the Cold War. A military dictatorship governed Brazil for more than 2 decades. During this period, the country experienced rapid economic expansion, often called the Brazilian miracle. Major infrastructure projects including highways, dams, and industrial complexes were built across the nation. However, this era also included censorship, repression, and serious human rights violations. By the 1980s, public pressure forced a gradual return to democracy. The modern giant. In the year 1985, Brazil officially restored democratic rule. A new constitution followed in 1988, guaranteeing civil rights and strengthening democratic institutions. Since then, Brazil has grown into one of the largest economies in the world. Cities such as São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and Brasília became global centers of finance, culture, and politics. Brazilian music, football, and festivals like Carnival captured the imagination of people across the planet. Brazil is home to more than 200 million people and contains one of the richest biodiversities on Earth. Yet the nation still faces enormous challenges, including economic inequality, political division, crime, and environmental threats to the Amazon. The Amazon question: Today, the Amazon rainforest remains one of the most important and controversial treasures of Brazil. Often called the lungs of the earth, the forest plays a major role in regulating the global climate. However, deforestation, agriculture, mining, and illegal logging continue to threaten large parts of the region. The world closely watches how Brazil will balance economic development with environmental protection. A nation of contrasts, Brazil remains a land of powerful contrasts. Modern skyscrapers stand beside vast informal neighborhoods. Advanced industries operate alongside remote communities reachable only by river. The nation produces world-class scientists, artists, and athletes, yet still struggles with deep social inequality. These contrasts become especially visible during Carnival in Rio de Janeiro. For several days each year, the streets explode with music, color, and dance. Millions celebrate culture, creativity, and resilience. Behind the samba rhythms and dazzling costumes lies centuries of history, indigenous roots, colonial struggle, African heritage, imperial ambition, and democratic transformation. The future of the giant. Today, Brazil stands among the most influential nations in the global south. It is a founding member of major international alliances, a powerful agricultural exporter feeding millions around the world, and the guardian of the largest rainforest on Earth. The future of Brazil will influence not only South America but also the entire planet. And as the sun rises again above the Amazon canopy, Brazil continues its journey. A nation shaped by history, powered by diversity, and steadily rising as the giant of South America. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to stay updated. See you next time.